For as long as Ethan Carter could remember, his mother had been his entire world. Growing up in the small town of Willow Creek, everyone knew Sarah Carter as the woman who sacrificed everything for her son. She worked double shifts at the local diner, cleaned offices at night, and still somehow found the energy to attend every school play, every baseball game, and every parent-teacher conference. Whenever someone asked about Ethan's father, Sarah's expression would darken for a moment before she offered the same answer she had given for 30 years. "He left before Ethan was born," she would say quietly. "Some people aren't meant to be parents." Ethan had heard the story so many times that he never questioned it. According to his mother, his father had discovered she was pregnant and disappeared without a trace. No phone call, no letter, no goodbye. As a child, Ethan would cry himself to sleep wondering why his father didn't want him. As a teenager, those tears turned into anger. By adulthood, the anger faded into indifference. Why waste emotions on someone who never cared? At 30 years old, Ethan had built a successful life as a graphic designer in Chicago. Yet despite the distance, he spoke to his mother nearly every day. She remained the most important person in his life, which was why the phone call on a rainy October morning terrified him. "Mr. Carter," a nurse asked, "your mother has been admitted to St. Mary's Hospital." His stomach dropped. "What happened?" "She suffered a minor stroke. She's stable now, but she'd like to see you." Within hours, Ethan was driving through heavy rain toward Willow Creek. When he entered Sarah's hospital room, relief flooded through him. She looked tired and pale, but she smiled the moment she saw him. "Look at you," she joked weakly. "You'd think I was dying. You scared me half to death." Sarah squeezed his hand. "I'm not going anywhere." At the time, Ethan believed her. After being discharged, Sarah needed help around the house for a few weeks. Ethan took time off work and moved back temporarily to care for her. The old house looked exactly as it had during his childhood. Same white porch, same creaking floors, same family photographs covering every wall. One afternoon, while Sarah slept upstairs, Ethan decided to clean the attic. Years of forgotten belongings filled the dusty space. Old furniture, boxes of Christmas decorations, school projects from decades ago. As he sorted through the clutter, he noticed something unusual in the far corner. A small wooden chest. Unlike everything else in the attic, it appeared carefully hidden beneath a pile of blankets. Curious, Ethan pulled it into the light. The chest was locked. He almost ignored it, but something about it bothered him. Sarah never locked anything. After searching nearby shelves, he found a tiny brass key taped beneath an old lamp. His pulse quickened. Why hide a key? Why hide the box? He inserted the key and turned it. Click! The lid slowly opened. Inside were dozens of yellowed photographs, neatly tied bundles of letters, and several official-looking documents. At first, Ethan smiled, assuming he had discovered forgotten family memories. Then he picked up the first photograph. His smile vanished. The picture showed a young man with dark hair holding a newborn baby in a hospital room. The baby was clearly Ethan. His heart skipped. On the back of the photograph, written in faded blue ink, were 6 words that changed everything. "To my son, Ethan, love, Dad." Ethan stared at the message, Dad. His hands began trembling. Slowly, he checked the date. The photograph had been taken just 12 days after his birth. Confusion exploded inside his mind. According to everything Sarah had ever told him, his father had abandoned them before Ethan was born. So how could this picture exist? Before he could process the shock, a voice suddenly echoed from the attic stairs. "Ethan!" He spun around. Sarah stood frozen at the entrance. Her face had turned ghostly white. For several seconds neither of them spoke. Then her eyes locked onto the photograph in his hand. Fear flashed across her face, not guilt, not sadness. Pure fear. Ethan, she whispered, put that back. The room seemed to shrink around him. What is this? Sarah took a shaky step forward. Please, what is this? He repeated louder. Tears filled her eyes, but instead of answering, she said something that made his blood run cold. You were never supposed to find that. And in that moment, for the very first time in his life, Ethan realized his mother had been hiding something. Something enormous, something buried for 30 years. Ethan barely slept that night. His mother's words echoed endlessly through his mind. You were never supposed to find that. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the photograph again, the smiling man holding him as a newborn. The message written on the back felt like a hammer striking his heart. To my son Ethan, love Dad. Nothing made sense anymore. Around midnight, Ethan left his bedroom and quietly walked downstairs. The old house was silent except for the ticking clock in the hallway. The wooden chest sat exactly where he'd left it. His mother had begged him not to look through it, but after 30 years of lies, he needed answers. Taking a deep breath, he opened the chest again. Inside were dozens of unopened letters tied together with faded blue ribbon. Many were addressed directly to him. One envelope immediately caught his attention. It was marked for Ethan's 5th birthday. His hands trembled as he carefully opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Happy birthday, buddy. Today you turn 5 years old. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I want you to know that I think about you every single day. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're happy, and I hope one day we meet. The letter was signed, Love Always, Dad. Ethan's chest tightened. This wasn't the writing of a man who had abandoned his child. This was the writing of someone desperate to be part of his son's life. He opened another letter, then another and another, each birthday, each Christmas, each major milestone of his life. The same man kept writing year after year, never missing a single occasion. By the time Ethan reached the last envelope, tears blurred his vision. Who was this man, and why had his mother hidden all of this? As he searched deeper into the chest, he discovered something folded beneath the letters. A piece of paper. At first glance, it appeared to be an old sketch, but when he unfolded it completely, he realized it was a hand-drawn map. The map showed the Carter property, the house, the garden, the fence, and a large red X marked beneath the enormous oak tree in the backyard. Ethan stared at it, the oak tree, his stomach twisted. Throughout his childhood, Sarah had always forbidden him from going near it. No climbing that tree, no digging around it, stay away from the roots. At the time, he thought she was simply being protective. Now he wasn't so sure. The next morning, Sarah acted as if nothing had happened. She avoided mentioning the chest entirely. So did Ethan. Neither was ready for that conversation. But that night, after Sarah went to sleep, Ethan grabbed a flashlight and quietly stepped into the backyard. The cold autumn air sent chills through his body. Moonlight illuminated the giant oak tree standing near the edge of the property. For decades, it had been just another part of the yard. Tonight, it looked like a guardian protecting a secret. Ethan carried a shovel from the garage and walked toward the tree. The red X on the map pointed directly beside the largest root. His heart pounded. What did you hide? He whispered. He pushed the shovel into the ground. The soil was hard and packed from years of weather. Minutes turned into an hour. Sweat soaked his shirt despite the cold. Still, he kept digging. Then suddenly, clang. The metal shovel struck something solid. Ethan froze. His pulse exploded. Dropping to his knees, he clawed away dirt with his hands. Slowly, a rusted metal box emerged from the earth. It was large, heavy, and clearly buried many years ago. With trembling fingers, Ethan lifted it from the hole. The lock had corroded completely. One hard pull snapped it open. Inside were stacks of letters, hundreds of them, photographs, birthday cards, Christmas presents still wrapped in faded paper, and legal documents sealed in plastic folders. The sight stole his breath. This wasn't a hidden memory. This was an entire life, a life that had been stolen from him. The first document he opened made his stomach drop. It was a court filing. The name at the top read, Michael Harrison vs. Sarah Carter Custody Petition. Ethan's hands shook violently as he read further. Michael Harrison, his father. According to the document, Michael had spent years searching for his missing son, years fighting through courts, years hiring investigators, years trying to find Ethan. The truth hit him like a freight train. His father hadn't abandoned him. His father had been looking for him the entire time. As tears filled his eyes, Ethan reached for another letter. He hadn't even begun to uncover the truth, but one thing was already certain. Everything his mother had told him for 30 years was a lie, and somewhere within these buried letters was the reason she had hidden them. The sunrise brought no comfort to Ethan. He sat alone in the backyard beside the open metal box, surrounded by 30 years of buried memories. Hundreds of letters lay scattered around him, birthday cards, Christmas messages, school year notes. Photographs of a man he had spent his entire life believing hated him, a man who, according to the evidence in front of him, had never stopped loving him. For hours, Ethan read every document he could find. The story that emerged shattered everything he thought he knew. Michael Harrison had filed lawsuit after lawsuit trying to gain access to his son. He had hired private investigators. He had contacted relatives, friends, and even former neighbors. Every trail eventually led nowhere. Sarah had disappeared with Ethan shortly after his birth, and she had spent decades making sure they stayed hidden. Ethan could hardly breathe as the truth settled over him. His father had not abandoned him. His father had been the one abandoned. The realization filled him with a painful mixture of grief and rage. He needed answers, real answers. Not from court papers, not from old letters, from the man himself. Using information from the documents, Ethan found Michael's last known address. The next morning, he left before Sarah woke up. The drive took nearly 3 hours. The entire journey felt unreal. Part of him imagined arriving at the house and finding Michael standing on the porch, maybe older, maybe tired, but alive. Maybe there was still time. Maybe 30 years of lies could somehow be repaired. But deep inside, Ethan feared the truth would be crueler. When he finally arrived, his heart sank. The small blue house looked abandoned. The lawn was overgrown. The windows were dark. A middle-aged woman watering flowers next door noticed him standing at the gate. "Can I help you?" she asked. Ethan swallowed hard. "I'm looking for Michael Harrison." The woman's expression immediately changed. Sadness crossed her face. "Oh, honey." The word struck like a knife. "No." Ethan whispered. The woman lowered her eyes. "Michael passed away 6 months ago." For a moment, the world stopped moving. 6 months, only 6 months. Ethan's legs felt weak. The father he had spent 30 years hating, the father he had finally discovered was innocent. The father he desperately wanted to meet, gone, forever. A lump formed in his throat. He had missed him by 6 months. 30 years stolen, and now there would never be another chance. The neighbor gently invited him inside. Over coffee, she shared stories about Michael, stories that made Ethan's heartbreak even worse. "He talked about you constantly," she said softly. "He did," she nodded. "Every birthday, he'd buy a gift, every Christmas too." Ethan looked away, fighting tears. He never stopped hoping you'd walk through that door one day. The woman disappeared briefly into another room and returned carrying several boxes. After the funeral, nobody knew what to do with these. Ethan opened the first box. Inside were dozens of wrapped presents, each labeled with a year: age 7, age 10, age 16, age 21, age 25, a lifetime of gifts waiting for a son who never came. Tears finally spilled down Ethan's face. The neighbor placed a hand on his shoulder. He loved you very much. Later that afternoon, Ethan sat alone inside Michael's former study. The house had been left untouched. Books still lined the shelves. Family photographs covered the desk. In one frame was the same hospital photo Ethan had discovered in the attic, his father holding him as a newborn. Both smiling. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to imagine what his life could have been. Baseball games, birthday parties, father, son talks, 30 years of memories that never happened. As he searched through desk drawers, he discovered several journals. Michael's journals, the final pieces of the puzzle. Hours passed as Ethan read page after page. Then he found the entry that changed everything. The truth wasn't simple. Years before Ethan was born, Michael and Sarah had been involved in a devastating car accident. Sarah had been driving. Michael's younger sister, Emma, had been in the passenger seat. Emma died at the scene. The guilt destroyed Sarah. According to Michael's journal, she became consumed by fear that Michael's family blamed her for Emma's death. Over time, that fear transformed into paranoia. When Ethan was born, Sarah convinced herself that Michael would eventually take the baby away from her. Despite Michael repeatedly reassuring her, the fear never disappeared. Eventually, she ran, and once she started lying, she never stopped. Ethan closed the journal and stared out the window. His mother hadn't hidden the truth because she hated Michael. She hid it because she was terrified, but fear didn't excuse what she had done. She had stolen a father from his son, and a son from his father. Now there was only one thing left to do. He had to go home and confront the woman who had built his entire life on a lie. The drive back to Willow Creek felt longer than any journey Ethan had ever taken. Michael's journals sat on the passenger seat beside him. Every red light, every mile marker, every empty stretch of highway reminded him of the 30 years that had been stolen from both father and son. He wasn't just carrying books and letters. He was carrying the truth, and the truth was heavier than anything he had ever known. When Ethan finally pulled into the driveway, the old oak tree stood silently in the fading evening light. The same tree that had hidden decades of secrets, the same tree beneath which his mother had buried an entire relationship. Sarah was sitting on the front porch waiting for him. The moment she saw the journals in his hands, her face crumbled. She knew there was no point pretending anymore. For several moments neither spoke. Then Ethan climbed the porch steps and sat across from her. "I found him," he said quietly. Sarah lowered her eyes. The silence that followed was painful. "Was he alive?" she whispered. Ethan felt his throat tighten. "No." A tear slid down Sarah's cheek. She covered her mouth. For the first time, Ethan saw genuine regret in her expression. Not fear of being exposed, not fear of punishment, regret. "He died 6 months ago." Sarah closed her eyes. The weight of those words seemed to crush her. "I never wanted that," she said, "but it happened." The truth hung between them like a storm cloud. Finally, Sarah began to talk. For hours, she confessed everything: the accident, the guilt, the fear, the panic that grew stronger every year. She admitted hiding Michael's letters. She admitted burying the box. She admitted creating the story Ethan had believed his entire life. Every lie, every secret, every stolen year. When she finished, tears streamed down her face. "I know you hate me," she whispered. Ethan looked at the woman who had raised him, the woman who packed his school lunches, the woman who worked herself, exhausted so he could attend college. The woman who had lied to him every day for 30 years. He felt anger, he felt heartbreak, but strangely, he didn't feel hatred. Hatred would only continue the damage. Instead, an idea had begun forming during his drive home. A different kind of revenge. Months passed. While Sarah expected Ethan to leave and never return, he focused on something else entirely. He began writing. Using Michael's letters, journals, court records, and photographs, Ethan documented everything. Every truth, every lie, every consequence. The manuscript took nearly a year to complete. When it was finally published, it exploded across the country. The book told the story of a father searching for his son, a son searching for the truth, and a mother whose fear destroyed 3 lives. Readers connected deeply with the story. Television programs invited Ethan for interviews. Podcasts requested conversations. News outlets featured his journey. Thousands of letters arrived from people who had experienced similar family secrets. The book became a bestseller, and with every interview, Sarah was forced to confront the reality she had spent decades hiding. Yet Ethan never attacked her publicly. He never insulted her, never called her evil, never encouraged others to judge her. Instead, he simply told the truth that became the greatest revenge of all, because truth required no exaggeration. Truth spoke for itself. The consequences Sarah faced came not from Ethan's anger, but from her own actions. Years of deception could no longer remain buried, but something unexpected happened. As the months passed, Ethan noticed his anger slowly fading. The more he shared Michael's story, the more he understood something important. Carrying hatred would not bring his father back. It would only steal more years, so Ethan decided to honor Michael in a different way. Using profits from the book, he created the Michael Harrison Foundation. Its mission was simple: help reconnect separated families, support children searching for lost parents, provide legal assistance to parents fighting to remain in their children's lives. Within a few years, the foundation helped hundreds of families reunite. Michael's name became a symbol of hope instead of tragedy. One autumn evening, nearly 3 years after discovering the buried box, Sarah asked Ethan if she could visit. Together they walked into the backyard. The giant oak tree towered above them. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Ethan handed her one final letter, Michael's last letter, the one written shortly before his death. Sarah's hands trembled as she read. Tears streamed down her face. The final line read, "Love survives even when truth is buried." Sarah collapsed into sobs. For 30 years she had buried the truth beneath that tree. Now she could no longer hide from it. Ethan gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I forgive you." Sarah looked up in shock. "After everything?" Ethan nodded. "Not because what you did was okay." He glanced toward the oak tree. "But because I don't want your lie to control the rest of my life." For the first time in decades, the burden between them began to lift. The truth had finally come to light. The lie was gone, and beneath the same tree that once hid secrets, something new finally grew. Healing, hope, and peace.